So I'm Alex Lockwood. I was one of the founder members of Animal Rebellion back in June 2019. I'm also a senior lecturer in creative and professional writing at the University of Sunderland. And I'm a member of the Research Advisory Committee for the Vegan Society and have been involved with different forms of animal activism since about 2014. I wrote a book called The Pig in Thin Air, which was published by Lantern Books in 2016, which was all about connecting animal agriculture and climate change and finding your place within animal advocacy. And I've recently been doing work with the Vegan Society on developing a report for the ideas for policy for a plant-based food system.
Great. Well, thank you for being here today. So this show is called We Need to Talk About It, and it's basically a podcast that is helping us talk more about animal agriculture, because we think at Animal Rebellion that we don't talk about it enough. So thank you for being here. And so we've got a couple of questions for you today. And the first one being, how did Animal Rebellion happen, and what was your first goal when you created it?
Sure. I think it's probably a good idea for me just to sort of start by saying that one of the reasons why I'm talking about it like as in a straight white middle class man rather than someone else. There's a number of reasons for that. One being that I was one of the founders, one of the founding core team, as it were. And I'm also writing a couple of books about Animal Rebellion now, actually, to be able to document it and produce the history. But obviously, every single person who took part for 1 hour of one activity or over the whole of the rebellion for the last year and a half is Animal Rebellion. Any of those people could speak about it. And perhaps one of the best reasons for me to do this is that actually, obviously the new rebellion is coming up, and actually by me doing this, I can actually help free up their time to do that. There were so many people involved in the organisation of Animal Rebellion starting up, and there's a couple who was really important to sort of mention. So at first, sort of the idea of it first came about because Extinction Rebellion had such a big impact in April 2019 in terms of really getting the government to declare, or the parliament to declare, a climate emergency, having a massive impact on the streets, getting people out and active. It really made a shift. It really made a movement, didn't it, in terms of environmental action for climate and ecological emergencies in the UK. And there was a woman called Dora Hargitay, and I hope I pronounced her name correctly, but she spoke to Roger Hallam in April 2019 about, hey, look, there's this whole animal rights movement, animal justice movement that isn't engaged as much as it could be with Extinction Rebellion, because Extinction Rebellion isn't making the demands about animal agriculture that animal justice activists, vegans would want to see. And that just so happened it came along at a time where Extinction Rebellion were thinking, well, how do we get the other movements who are active on the streets involved in Extinction Rebellion? So Extinction Rebellion came up with this whole idea of a movement of movements. And the animal activism and animal justice movement was probably the largest separate sector, separate grouping, as it were, who weren't involved as much as they could be. There was a group called Extinction Rebellion Vegans, already active, but there wasn't a separate body, aligned with Extinction Rebellion around their asks. So there's a couple of people, really important people to mention. Probably most of all, a person called Dan Kidby, who was the heart and soul of Animal Rebellion as it came to life in June 2019 last year, and without whom it wouldn't have happened at all. He was very much sort of like, that beating heart of it. And he wouldn't want to take the credit all on his own either. It was with a team of, a bunch of people, about 15 of us, who came together at the end of June 2019 to say, do we have the time to commit to getting this off the ground and doing it, opening it up to everyone, bringing along the whole animal justice movement in the UK and globally, to demand a plant-based food system in the UK and globally, to align ourselves with the power that XR had been creating on the streets and in politics and in government, in terms of eliciting response, and to leverage, and I know it sounds like quite a strategic word, but to leverage the moment of the absolute urgency of acting on climate change to for animals. And probably my proudest moment of it was like, that the phrase, we can't end the climate emergency without fixing the animal emergency was for me the key thing of our message. It's like bringing these two key crises together and pointing out to people who weren't aware of the massive impact of animal agriculture on the climate emergency, that if they're active for climate, they've got to be active for animals as well. And so we were coming at it with our hearts and soul for animals, seeing this moment of opportunity to align and really like sort of express and educate and illuminate and illustrate and act upon the fact that we've got to do this for animals, not just ourselves. And oh, by the way, animal agriculture is the biggest cause of this climate emergency anyway. Yeah, so that's where it started.
That's great. Yeah. And it's like we just realized that it's a very young movement as well. It's like it's been a year. And do you think we made some progress since then? And because we've got like loads of groups all over the world now, and it's just been like a huge thing. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's been incredible, really. I mean, it was incredible at the time, for those of us sitting in a room and going, okay, what is this? How do we do it? So all of a sudden making a few announcements, getting it out there, and realizing that the time was right for this kind of movement, position, ask, and people just taking it up really, really sort of quickly and keenly, all across the world, Israel, Canada, Spain, South America, across Europe, Australia, everywhere, just going, oh, of course, like Extinction Rebellion is this big thing. We're rebels for life. Of course, animal justice activists are rebels as well. Of course, that this is an opportunity to bring these two major crises together. So it was really, really inspiring, just to see how far it grew. And I do think that Animal Rebellion has had a big impact, because when Animal Rebellion came about, even there are great animal rights and justice organizations all around the world doing incredible work. The majority of them over the last 10 or 20 years, organizations like Veganuary or ProVeg or whatever, it's a lot about individual change. It's a lot about sort of like personal dietary choice, etc. And Animal Rebellion came along with a very clear, distinct message that acts as an umbrella and open to work with and complement everything that had already been happened, but very much a systemic message of the system has to change now quickly. It can't be up to individuals. It's got to be government. It's got to be pressure on corporations. It's got to be a systemic change, a revolutionary change in that sense, a very radical change. And the message was really, really clear that we needed to do that. And I think actually we have shifted the rest of the animal justice movement along with us, as well as shifting the climate movement and aligning together with the sense of, actually animal activists are here for people as well. They're here for the climate as well, and they're here to work together. So I think we achieved a huge amount actually in that small amount of time.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think it will look like in 10 years?
Hopefully it won't exist, of course. But I think that, one of the things that we spoke about a lot with Animal Rebellion was that feeling that it was, in a way, an umbrella for all of the different organizations and grassroots groups to maybe come together in a way that they hadn't come together before, about aligning as well with the big ecological climate messages. So lots and lots of people at our actions in October when we launched, and at the Animal Rights March in August when we launched alongside Surge, were from HuntSab organisations, we're from AV, we're from SAVE, we're from sort of Animal Justice Project, we're from PETA. All of the people came together and went, we can gather and collect together under this banner. And what I'd hope for in 10 years' time is that that kind of recognition that we can work together is even stronger. So like I actually the work I've been doing recently about sort of like the policy requirements we need for a plant-based food system. You know, I've been looking at things in different worlds, like the finance world, or you know, particularly where there's this thing called the inevitable policy response, in the fact that when we don't yet have the policies that we need to fundamentally change agriculture or the climate emergency, but the world is changing, and so we will have to have them. And so there's these ideas that the policies that we need will become inevitable. And I actually think that the policy to move towards a plant-based system will become inevitable. You know, for me, we're already on that transition. We're already moving that way. It's just, you know, how long does it take us to get there, and how fully will that transition be? So in 10 years' time, I'm actually really hopeful that a lot of the animal agriculture system won't be there anymore. There's a major report by Rethink X, an organization, about the future of the, you know, the global, but particularly American cattle industry. And it says it's not going to be there. You know, plant-based proteins, lab-grown, cultured, clean meat will have replaced it, because it is just the most unsustainable, ridiculously abusive, horrible system. You know, you would not design this system. And so now we have different opportunities to change, you know, like people are going to go in that direction. So I think in 10 years' time, we're going to be looking at a very, very different global food security system that will have vastly less animals in it. Because we actually have to. You know, the businesses and corporations, governments won't have any choice. And a lot of that actually, and I'm really proud about the fact that a lot of the movement towards that, the groundwork would have been laid by organisations, well, by groups, movements like Animal Rebellion. There's a quote from, I think, it's terrible to quote, it's like a white male economist, but Milton Friedman said, you know, you've got to do the work to keep the best ideas on the table at times of crisis, because when the people in power in times of crisis, they need answers, and they look around for whatever's closest, and they will grab whatever's closest. And I think that's what we try to do with Animal Rebellion. Get a plant-based food system into the normal conversations of people in the street, of people in office places, and people in investment houses. Get it into the normal conversation that a plant-based food system is possible, and then make it probable. And I think we've started the work for that. And I think hopefully in 10 years' time, it won't only be possible or probable, it will be inevitable, and it will just be working out how we bring it about.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I guess that we're talking more and more about it, and you see, you know, like, yes, people are changing, and so that's very good. What do you think Animal Rebellion could how do you think we could help even more, like in terms of actions and things like that? Like how can we be even more useful, like, you know, more than talking about it, like what kind of action could we imagine?
You
know,
I mean, I don't want to talk I don't want to sort of like speak for the people who are still organising the actions for Animal Rebellion. So the people who are still involved, like in terms of, like, you know, the grassroots key organisers, whether that be centrally in London or around the world or whatever, everything they're doing is incredible with very little resources. The actions that have taken place over the last 2 or 3 months in terms of, you know, painting Trafalgar Square fountains red and getting the media coverage there have been brilliant in terms of raising awareness. Actually standing alongside farmers in the UK when they drove their tractors to Parliament to protest against the agricultural bill was like a really momentous moment, because for the first time ever in Farmers Weekly magazine, animal rights activists were mentioned positively. Do you know what I mean? So like working out where we can stand alongside people to bring about change was always part of the DNA of Animal Rebellion. It's why the first occupation of Smithfield Market at the start of the October Rebellion was so powerful and successful, because we did it. You know, not everyone was happy that we were doing it that way, but we did it in agreement with the market. You know, we were there to show a vision, and to not only show a vision of what the future could look like, but a vision of what it's like for meat industry workers and vegan activists to work together for the greater good, for what's inevitably coming. Do you know what I mean? So the more, I'm really always very proud of what Animal Rebellion does, because its DNA is so good about, we're not here to fight ordinary people. We're here to work together for the greater good of animals, while also working really intersectionally, really respectfully of people, really respectfully of sort of people in their capacities, welcoming all parts of everyone, and doing actions in that way. I mean, I think what Animal Rebellion does is brilliant. It's like, there's a lot of spicy actions. It's about non-violent direct action. It's about really making the media sit up and notice, which makes the general public sit up and notice. So I think more of that is going to be good. But I think actually more and more, it's about building sort of really, building alliances where you wouldn't expect them.
Yeah.
It's about building sort of relationships where you wouldn't expect them. But and most importantly as well, speaking directly to government. One of the complaints, actually, there's a complaint by a member of parliament from October, is that you guys are making all these demands of us. You never even came and spoke to us. You know what? So we have to be really, really clever politically.
Yeah, that's
because we're asking for system change. So it's got to be right. Who have the handles on the levers of power. So let's speak to them. Let's work with them. Let's put pressure on them to show them why animal agriculture has to end, and why animals deserve as much justice as other human beings.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's very interesting that going straight, directly to government, because it's something that I guess that hasn't been done yet fully. So I think that that could be good for future actions. What would you say to someone that would join today, that would want to join?
Yeah, I think being part of Animal Rebellion was it was a transformational moment for so many of us who took part in it, because it did shift out of individual actions and individual responsibility, and it took it out of sort of not small, but geographically located, actions in Belfast, actions in Brighton, actions in Newcastle, wherever it might be, to join like a global movement. In the same way, working with the Save movement is really good. I think becoming part of Animal Rebellion and taking part in its actions is transformational for you individually, and it's the best way that we're going to bring about some systemic change. It's probably the most. It has the DNA right, and it had the DNA right from the start, which is real sort of pat on the back, credibility, like a real sense of achievement of those people who got the DNA right to begin with. People like Binny and Esther and Delan and Emily, the core team, and Tim. I wouldn't want to miss anyone out. Sorry if I've missed loads of people out, but we got the DNA right about this is about sort of positive change, a vision of what we want to see, not what we don't want to see. It's about doing it for animals, but using every tactic we can, whether that be leading with a climate argument, but it's still for animals. It was regenerative from the beginning, adopting all of the best practices of XR. It was open and welcome, to everyone. And even though I'm a white middle class man saying this, it was never dominated by white men at all. Animal Rebellion got that right in ways that XR haven't got that right. XR has been rightly criticised in many ways as a white middle class, very often male sort of led thing. Animal Rebellion was never that. And that reflects animal activism and animal justice movements in the round anyway, which are generally led by women. And the majority of people who do animal activism are women. So actually, the men who were involved were so, we got it. We stepped back. We allowed everyone to have, not allowed everyone to have, but everyone had their voice, and white men did not lead. And I think that was really important. And it was so great having affinity groups of people just meeting up from different parts. It was so great having people who were solo activists come from all over the country to just then join and meet people, and then all of a sudden find a home and find a tribe and be able to act. So it's very welcoming, very open, very effective group that actually you see where your actions lead to, and that's why it's transformative. It isn't just your actions like a drop in a bucket going nowhere. You see where your actions lead to, and it really makes change.
And there's loads of affinity groups now. Like, you know, we've got musicians, filmmakers, you know, tech people, and it's just, yeah, it's really, really nice to see everyone together and projects just come together. Like we've got a mobile app in the pipelines as well, like, you know, things like this. So yeah, it's just really exciting.
Yeah.
Great. So what was your favorite action?
It's difficult. It's difficult to say, or it's difficult not to think of Smithfield as the opening action because, well, everyone else on that opening day of the previous rebellion around London was getting shifted on by police, and you know, we did something that no one expected us to do, which was come to an agreement with the Smithfield market to occupy Europe's biggest and oldest meat market with 1,000 vegan activists safely and legally. You know, the only person who get arrested was our police liaison person because he was bored, so he wanted to go and get arrested. You know, and it was just vision. It was a vision that we saw come to life. That was incredibly powerful, and it made people have to rethink the story of who animal activists are. They couldn't come along and go, you're antagonistic, you're getting in the way of people's livelihoods. The Times journalists had to come along and find a different story. The BBC, the LBC, you know, they all had to write a different story. And it was a framing action. It's like framing actions are so important. Like if you get that first framing action right, it changes the narrative for everything that follows. So you can then go and get arrested at Billingsgate Market. You can go and do your saved like vigils outside the Farnborough slaughterhouse. But you're doing it within that bigger context of the bigger framing action that set the tone. And that's why for me it was really that's the one that I remember. That's the one that sends like shivers down my spine, because it was just I think it just shifted things nationally, in a national conversation about who animal justice activists are, what we want, and what we can achieve.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. And you said that you were writing a book about animal rebellion?
Yeah, so this is coming down. I've got I've been speaking to two books. For me, it feels really, really important to document all the voices and all of the actions. And so what I'm going to do, so I've got two books that are coming from the same material. One for Cambridge University Press, which was about contentious politics, about so activism like animal rebellion. So it's more of an academic theorizing of what we did and how we went about it. But I'm doing a whole bunch of interviews with a lot of the people who were there to begin with, the core team members, and anyone who was involved. So what I'm going to do, and then we're going to produce a book that's going to be for activists. You know, this is what we did, this is how it came about, and this is what you can learn from it. And hopefully it's going to be quite open access. So I'm going to produce it and then put it online for everyone else to contribute. Do you know what I mean? Say, oh yeah, actually you forgot this, or you forgot that, or did you hear about this voice? You hear about that voice. So actually, it's a hopefully it will be a very collaboratively written thing. So with an author list of 1,000 people who all add and contribute, and that will then be a handbook of or a record, a historical record of this was animal rebellion, where it came from, as a way to gather everyone's voices and really celebrate it, but document it so people can learn from it.
Great, yeah, that's a great idea. That's a brilliant idea, because we need this kind of Bible. I want to say Bible, but you know what I mean. Just
animal Bible, and just I mean some of a lot of the ideas of that, some of that collaborative idea. I mean that's all. XR have done that. Again, Dan Kidby, one of the sort of core original team members, like it was that's one of his his idea of how to do that. So hopefully, and I'll be working on that in the next 3 to 6 months.
Great. Okay, and one final question for you, I guess. Are you going to be in the streets in September?
Yeah, coming down obviously for the march on the 1st from Smithfield to Parliament. I'm going to try and get Animal Rebellion people involved as much as possible with some of the stuff I'm now doing with Writers Rebel. There was a wonderful young man called Iggy, who was a photographer who was there at the rebellion in October, and unfortunately he died since then. His mother, Liz Jensen, is part of Writers Rebel, and they've produced he was working on a crossword, like an Extinction Rebellion animal wildlife crossword that we've produced and want to share around the streets. And there's going to be a big action as well, I think, on the 2nd of September, the Media Tell the Truth action. and with some really, really good reasons for animal activists to be involved in taking that message to sort of public lobbyists, in investment houses and whatever. So yeah, I'll be there for the first couple of days. Sadly, I've got to work after that, but yeah, I'll be back on the streets. Yeah, will you? You'll be there?
Yeah. Well, we've got some stuff going on in Bristol as well, and we're all going to London, I think. Get to work
It's really,
there.
I mean, what I think one of the things that worked really well last time was that everyone who could get to London to make the numbers did, and everyone who couldn't was active in their own cities supporting. And you know, if you've got that connection of affinity group from your local city, you can be in one or the other places. Do you know what I mean? And it was like the connection between those groups was really, mostly really, really positive. And I think that's a really good, it's powerful. It's important to have it geographically spread around as well.
I guess that, you know, we need to get local groups, you know, up and running now, and get them stronger, and attract more people. Great. What would you say do you want to say a word to the people that are going to be in the streets? Maybe a word of,
you know, like everyone's using language of heroes and heroines and heroism. I'm not totally comfortable with it, but everyone still feels like a hero. Do you know what I mean? Most importantly for me, it's like it is a transformational time to take a step onto the streets and stand up for what you believe in, and to do it with others. I mean, I'm a writer. You know, I try to spend as much time as I can on my own in my studio, you know, not engaging with people too much. And I'm a bit of an introvert. And to commit myself to 40 or 50 hours a week for 4 months while I've still got a full-time job as well. And luckily, you know, I got away with doing not much work during the rebellion. It really transformed me. It really transformed me. And it transformed what I felt about people and what we can do together. And that's what I'd say to people. You know, if you can go for 1 hour of one day, or if you can go for every moment of every day, do as much as you can, or as little as you want, because there will be some part of you transformed by it. And I know that sounds quite selfish. It's like, oh, but what it's for the animals, isn't it? It's not for us. Like, the more we are transformed by the actions we do, the more likely we are to continue to do them. And while animals still suffer, and while animals are still incarcerated and trapped within the agricultural system, they need us to be motivated and empowered and connected. So the more we can do that, the better. And animal rebellion has been the best form of transforming, empowering, motivating people that has come along in the last few years. So it's really important.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Where can we find all the information about your books and your work in general?
Nowhere. I'm on Twitter, like Alex Lockwood. Is probably one of the best places at the moment. As soon as and it will be through sort of Animal Rebellion. So once like the Animal Rebellion Facebook pages. So once this material is all gathered that I can then share and get people to comment on and contribute to, I'll be in touch with sort of like the current core organising team of Animal Rebellion to sort of share that and get it out and get as many voices as possible feeding into that collaborative work.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you in London then.
Yeah, thank you. See you in London. Yeah. Come and say hi.
All right. Yeah, definitely. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
And you. Bye.
Bye-bye.